Jordan Peterson is a prominent warrior in the fight for free speech. He challenges people to commit themselves to the highest good.
There is no more effective way of operating in the world than to conceptualize the highest good that you can and then strive to attain it. There's no better pathway to self-realization and the ennoblement of being than to posit the highest good that you can conceive of and commit yourself to it. And then you might also ask yourself, and this is definitely worth asking, is do you really have anything better to do? And if you don't, well, why would you do anything else?
This raises the question, what is the highest conceivable good? Rudolf Steiner gave an answer to this question in his philosophy of freedom. Steiner speaks of different levels of moral development. There are stages of moral development that lead up to the highest conceivable principle of morality. This is the first of 2 videos about the different levels of morality. These videos are part of a series called The Keys to Self-Motivation and Free Will. The ideas discussed are from Chapter 9 in the Philosophy of Freedom. You can read Chapter 9 on our website, philosophyoffreedom.com. In the previous video, 9.3, called The Motivated Idea, we learned that for an act of will to take place, we need a motive or goal to meet a driving force of our character and become an empowering, motivated idea. There are different levels of driving force, and there are different levels of motives. This video is about the different levels of driving force. The next video will be about the levels of motive. The driving forces of character are identified by first looking at the elements of individual life. Our life is made up of thinking, feeling, and willing. There are 2 levels of thinking: perceptual thinking and a higher level of conceptual thinking. Perceptual or concrete thinking is normal thinking. It is everyday thinking about sense-perceptible objects and events. Perceptual thinking gives us a description of what we observe. Conceptual or abstract thinking goes beyond observation to the underlying principles and laws that are at the core of the world. Conceptual thinking is the advanced thinking of scientists, mathematicians, and philosophers who think in universal concepts. By conceptualizing an event into its universal concepts, the thinker is better able to understand and problem-solve the observed event. The scientist uses conceptual thinking to work with the universal laws of nature, while a philosopher uses it to answer ethical questions by thinking about universal ethical principles. The ethical individualist takes both a scientific and philosophical approach to life. These 4 elements of individual life become driving forces of action. Willing is expressed in level 1 as instinct. This is the lowest level of motivation that drives us to act. The next level is feeling.
All you need is love.
They say that all you need is love alone, but there are higher levels. At level 3, perceptual thinking becomes a driving force for action based on what we have learned from our past experience. At this level, our action is motivated by practical experience. The highest driving force is practical reason. Practical reasoning is a type of conceptual thinking. Practical reason is when we use reasoning to determine how to act. Now I will go into more detail about the different levels. Level 1 is instinct. Perceiving is immediately transformed into willing without the intervention of either a feeling or a concept. At this level of morality, we act without thought or feeling. The perception of something, like a piece of cake, triggers an immediate act of will. There are two kinds of instinctive actions, those of the lower senses and those of the higher senses. The lower senses drive us to satisfy our animal needs for food and sex. We use our higher senses to perceive social situations. Tact is a social skill. Tact is a way of speaking and acting that considers other people's feelings and reactions. It is the ability to avoid upsetting or offending people by being careful not to say or do things that would hurt their feelings. When tactful behavior is repeated enough, it becomes automatic instinctive behavior. Tact stands, along with animal instincts, at the lowest level of morality. The driving force to act at level 2 is feeling. Certain feelings attach to what we perceive in the external world and become a driving force of action. These feelings include shame, pride, sense of honor, humility or remorse, compassion, revenge, gratitude, piety, loyalty, love, and duty. When politicians, advertisers, or the media want to control the public, they often manipulate people's feelings. Manipulating feelings is very easy. Advertisers use shame to sell products. They use pride to make you feel like you will be better than others if you just buy a luxury car. The media manipulates feelings to control public opinion. They ignore the truth and instead show images to provoke feelings of compassion. The moral driving force above feelings is thoughts and ideas. This takes us to practical experience at level 3. Ideas of actions previously carried out in a similar case hover before the mind as determining models in all later decisions. When we face life situations, we remember what we did in the past in a similar situation. This is practical experience. The individual ideas that contain our practical experience are part of our characterological disposition. These ideas hover before our minds to determine what we will do. The highest level of driving force is pure conceptual thinking. We call this practical reason. The highest level is conceptual thinking, without reference to any specific perceptual content. We determine the content of a concept through pure intuition on the basis of a conceptual system. Practical reason is when we use reasoning to determine how to act. The faculty used for practical reason is pure conceptual thinking. I think out for myself how I should act without being bound by my past behavior or peculiarities of personal feelings. This is freedom of thought. Freedom of thought is possible at the level of pure conceptual thinking practiced by scientists, mathematicians, and philosophers. At level 3, practical experience, our thought contains the perceptual content of our past experience, such as recalling how to rebuild an engine. At level 4, we practice pure reasoning by thinking within universal concepts that have no sense-perceptible content. I will give an example. The universal concept triangle contains all possible triangles. The universal triangle is something that is not sense-perceptible. It is an ideal that exists in the mind. The triangles that are sense-perceptible have a specific form that does not contain all possible triangles. Universal concepts cannot be perceived in the world. They can only be grasped intuitively. This is why practical reason, which thinks within universal concepts, is an intuitive process. But how can thinking about universal concepts relate to our real-world life situations? In order to apply practical reason to life, the real-life situations we face need to be lifted into the conceptual realm. This is done by conceptualizing the life event. An example of this in counseling is called case conceptualization. Case conceptualization is used by counselors to understand their clients.
Case conceptualization allows us to see the big picture. This helps us to understand our clients in context, just like putting together a puzzle. And it also helps us to organize our ideas so that we can make more connections and associations than we would be able to otherwise. Case conceptualization looks something like this. So Nate says, "I just can't stand it anymore, you know? It's like she's so needy all of the time. I constantly have to reassure her. Being in a relationship with her is seriously exhausting." And it happens. An idea pops into your head. Holy crap. This is exactly how he described his relationship with his mother last week. Your idea about Nate's relationship with his mother mirroring the relationship with his girlfriend is what we call metalogue.
The counselor organizes the personal details of the client's life story within a therapeutic conceptual system as a way to apply a therapeutic theory. Then the counselor uses conceptual thinking to intuitively come up with a plan of action to help the client. The motivation of the counselor is not personal. It is practical reason. At level 4 practical reason, ethics is raised above the personal levels of instincts, emotions, and practical experience by conceptualizing real-life situations. I will end the video here. In this video, we discuss the driving force that motivates an act of will. In the next video, part 2, we will discuss the different levels of motive that guide the act of will. This will lead us to the highest conceivable principle of morality.